Hi, everyone. Mike White here. Welcome to this week's vlog post. Good week for us in the bond market last week. Interest rates seem to be stabilizing and improving a little bit. We can keep our fingers crossed and be hopeful that we have put a ceiling, at least temporarily, to the interest rate environment that we were in, and maybe we gradually start to go a little lower. It's been a really crazy time when it comes to the volatility of the mortgage rate market once again. And it's something that we've seen every few months. In the last couple of years, it just seems that we hit these spurts. And one of the things that I've been paying attention to that has been causing some of this, not all of it, but some of the price pressure, some of the volatility are the numbers that we're seeing in debt. And the overall debt market, the overall amount of debt, both public and private, is something that is starting to really price into and put pressure on the rate environment. And it is really a thing that for us in the mortgage market, we have to pay attention to on a daily basis, because every one of our clients comes in to us with a debt situation that we have to deal with. And we have to explain to them that even if their friends have the same income and the same credit score and whatever, you may qualify for completely different loan sizes and loan payments because of your personal debt situation and how that debt is structured. And I think we're in an era now, and again, I'm in my late 60s, so understanding debt and budgets and things like that, plus my years in the mortgage business, has made it, a significant part of my life. But for most people, it's not something they hardly think about. And the debt picture is becoming more and more of an issue as money becomes more and more expensive to borrow. And we have to look at this both in our industry, from an industry standpoint, but also from a client service, a constituent service, maybe even an area service that we have to look at is understand that, like right now, consumer debt is piling up faster than at any point in history. It's the largest amount that it's ever been. We're setting records on a ridiculous basis for how much outstanding debt there is. And it doesn't help when things like the government, just piling debt upon debt upon debt without any clear plan on what they're going to do about it. And as interest rates go higher, the cost to service that debt, the cost to reborrow, the Treasury Department is scrambling to find new ways of putting different types of debt out there to try to lower the cost. Because when the Fed was borrowing money at 0.5% or 1%, it's not the same as the Fed going out there and having to borrow money at 4 and 5% to service the debt that's rolling off its books as it approaches. So the Fed is faced with that quandary, borrowing more and more money and trying to figure out more and more ways in which to do it. But we're also dealing with the consumer, and the consumer who's been keeping this economy rolling forward with its purchasing activity. They've been doing it largely through depletion of savings and accumulation of debt. And a lot of that debt is not as easily rolled over as it was before. The payments to service that debt is higher. And in many cases, companies are not raising those credit card limits for that borrower for them to keep going, or they're not issuing new credit for them to keep going. So many people are finding different ways of getting different types of credit, and that credit is generally more expensive. And the more expensive the credit gets, the bigger the payments become. The bigger the payments become, guess what? The more debt now they have to go into to service that debt, because it's not just an idea of going temporarily into some debt to achieve certain things, but now it's a way of life, like $1,000 cell phones and $500 to $1,000 plus car payments to $150 a month for coffee on a regular basis per person. those things have become quote unquote normalized, when not that long ago, those things would have appeared to be outrageous. So we've known in our industry, some of us were raised on the difference between good debt and bad debt, but those lines have become really blurred because people have been piling up huge amounts of debt. And recently, and we've seen it, and many of us are part of, people are realizing that they've accumulated an awful lot of debt and it's gotten very expensive. So many are reaching in and pulling out the large amount of equity that they have in their current homes, and they're refinancing or using other vehicles to pull that equity out to pay off the higher interest rate debt. And that may be fine if the cycle doesn't repeat. Because right now we have, most of the people in this country have huge amounts of equity in their houses because of property appreciation. So it's there. And yes, it's smarter to pay 6 and 7 and 8% or whatever it is for your debt than it is to pay 18, 20, 26% debt, provided that the borrower doesn't get themselves back into that situation. We've seen it before. People go out there, they refinance, they have a few years, and the next thing you know, they're back to you 3 years later and they need a cash out refi to pay off that debt. Now they owe more against their house, which hopefully has gone up in value, but they're carrying that debt and haven't learned their lesson, which is why some of my clients that I've been talking to have taken the time to go out and do some financial literacy videos with accountants and financial planners and estate planning attorneys, going through the ins and outs of not only the market and debt and understanding how to manage it and what you can do about it, but drilling it down onto the state and local issues that are with us. And one of my clients who's done a series of these videos have done a really nice job and has been sharing them with, started sharing them on their social media page and through email to their database. And the response has been significant. And we're talking about people who have, seen these videos, understood the challenge that they're in, and are using options to, stabilize their financial situation. But I think we can go further than that. And as we end the school year, now is a great time for you as a professional to get out there with your other financial professionals and maybe speak to some of the people at local schools, getting into those high schools and explaining to those high school kids what the difference is between good debt and bad debt and how credit works and the cost of doing things. Because, I raised 6 kids and got a bunch of degrees that helped pay for, and some of my children went to school and worked while they were at school and had scholarships and whatever, and came out of school without any debt. Others went, and because of what they were doing and how they wanted to do it, made the choice to borrow money to pay for things during school, as opposed to either not doing them or not working. And I understood the challenges. I explained the best I can, but there's the difference between the child that I have that's out there working with no student loan debt and others that are, in their 30s who are paying for cheeseburgers they ate when they were, freshman and sophomore in college. It's tough to pay 20 years later for that cheeseburger. And how many times over have you paid for it? That type of education can be invaluable, and it's not being provided in most cases in the schools. And I think working with your schools, especially at the high school level, especially before these kids get off to college or go out into the world, looking at the cost. We're seeing right now a lot of people go out there and they get degrees or they borrow money to go to school. And I saw a staggeringly scary number that really pushed me back, was the fact that 41% of the kids that go off to college graduate. 41%. What that means 59% of the people didn't graduate, so they didn't get a degree. What percentage of them borrowed money not to complete school and are now paying on that debt? What percentage of the 41% that do graduate end up with degrees where they're not getting a job in the field that pays them enough to pay off that debt. Or forget that, maybe don't even get a job that they're using that degree for. The degree is useless. They're doing something completely different. And so it is really important that financial literacy becomes something that we at least address. And it's easier now with video. It's easier now with other professionals to help you out. It's easiest now. Technology can help. But that one-on-one communication, I think if you take the time now to get in front of your schools, your high schools, and talk to those principals and talk to those counselors at those schools, that there's a fair chance that you might be able to put yourself in a position to help some kids out that would be life-changing for them. And I think when you think about things like that, yes, like everything else, most people won't take that information and do anything with it, but think of all the people that do. Think of the impact you can have on the lives of those young adults as they approach school and start making financial decisions for themselves. That impact you might make in them, you might not ever see it, but it could be generational. So if you'd like to talk more about what my clients are doing in their videos and how they go about it, you've got other questions that you'd like to talk about it, it's Mike at imtcoaching.com. We'll talk to you again next week. Take care.